Once, the legendary hero known as Superman fell to the might of the villain known as Doomsday. In response to this, a secret genetic engineering group known as Project Cadmus saw this as an opportunity to bring back the hero with an ambitious genetic engineering project, unlike any ever done before. The group managed to procure 2 genetic samples, one from the recently deceased Superman, and the other from Lex Luthor, though the latter's role in all of this was kept secret for years. Cadmus created a human clone with Kryptonian traits and artificially aged the resulting boy into a teenager, implanting him with the knowledge of an average high school student. The clone initially only possessed a telekinetic force field as a superpower that allowed him to roughly approximate some of Superman's abilities. This field gave him super strength, allowed him to fly at a top speed somewhere around Mach 5, could be used to deflect force fields and projectiles, destroy or disassemble objects via touch, be augmented into a telekinetic force that could be used as a projectile, and be used to hear sounds from a great distance. Over time, this clone would learn to apply this field in other ways, but it did leave him with a distinct vulnerability. The field was less effective at blocking heat and certain forms of energy. He possessed a number of genetic similarities to Kryptonians, including his ability to function as a sort of battery for solar energy, and possessed the same weakness Superman had to kryptonite. However, other aspects of this clone's physiology did not behave the same way as a normal Kryptonian. Cadmus theorized that as this new being reached adulthood, he would grow to develop Kryptonian strength and abilities. To what extent this strength would manifest, only time would tell. The clone was quickly set free from Cadmus' custody by a group of adventurous children known as the Newsboy Legion. One of the boys gave the clone a leather jacket, and the young man set out to Metropolis. The young man's arrival at the city occurred at the same time as when 3 others emerged, and all 4 of these individuals were viewed as being potentially a version of Superman returned to life. While the Eradicator and Cyborg Superman both claimed they were the real Superman, Steel made no such claim, and the clone was upfront about his origins as a genetic copy of the original Superman, as he understood it. When he met Lois Lane, the only thing he insisted was that he not be called Superboy. Telling anyone who would listen he was simply a clone, he set out to be the new protector of Metropolis. However, the relatively young Superman was completely inexperienced, and found himself unprepared for the challenge of being a superhero. Though he loved the attention, he was often naive and reckless in his behavior. He managed to get corporate sponsorship, but his actions led to the death of a helicopter pilot. The newly emerged hero Steel harshly rebuked Superman for this, and the young hero took Steel's lesson to heart. He repaid this kindness when he later saved the Man of Steel during a fire. Superman worked as a hero for a time, getting some additional advice from the hero called the Guardian, and teaming up with Supergirl to save many people during a battle with an assassin called Stinger, not realizing that Superman himself had provoked this incident when he approached a young reporter named Tana, and her boss hired the assassin in an attempt to drum up ratings. When Superman heard of Coast City being destroyed, he rushed to the scene where he found Cyborg Superman. The villain, secretly responsible for the city's destruction, tricked the young man, trapping him and using the footage to also trick the Justice League into going off-planet on a pointless mission, leaving Metropolis exposed in Cyborg Superman's mad quest for destruction. Superman was able to escape back to Metropolis, warning Steel, Supergirl, Lex Luthor, and Lois Lane of the oncoming destruction and Cyborg Superman's role in it. The group was surprised when the original Superman suddenly returned, and together they were able to defeat Cyborg Superman and his gathered forces. With the original return to life, the clone acknowledged that the one true Superman was back, and relinquished his claim to the title, much to the ire of his corporate sponsors. Finally accepting the name Superboy, he decided to leave Metropolis and find his own way in the world with his new identity. He gave up his apartment to the mild-mannered reporter known as Clark Kent. The clone returned to Cadmus and learned more about his origins before persuading them not to pursue making any more clones. Superboy began traveling the world before he found himself in Hawaii, and he began to carve a life here with some friends he met. He became a hero and protector of the islands, enjoying the unofficial title as Hawaii's protector and finding himself gradually building a rogues gallery of his own villains, including King Shark, Silver Sword, and a crazed man known as Scavenger. During the time, Superboy met and worked with many heroes and factions, such as Supergirl, the Suicide Squad, and the Legion of Superheroes. With the latter, Superboy traveled in time to the 30th century, where he was made an honorary Legionnaire for his help before being sent back home. Eventually, he was asked to take on the Kryptonian dog known as Krypto. Superboy reluctantly took the young dog in, though often passed off the responsibility to friends and neighbors. For a time, he also got a special visor that allowed him to replicate a version of Superman's heat vision. Superboy also began dating Tana for some time, the reporter he first met as Superman in Metropolis. During a battle with Scavenger, Superboy was left extremely sick, and the young man nearly died due to a disease specifically affecting clones created by the Cadmus Project. He survived this, but was upset to learn the effects of it all would leave him permanently in the body of a 16-year-old, never to grow older. With Superman's encouragement, he returned to Hawaii after this, only for the life he had set up for himself to slowly fall apart. A second encounter with the Legion of Superheroes proved far more tense than the first, and Tana grew frustrated breaking up with him and leaving the islands. When the villain Silver Sword was killed by a being known as Pele during an encounter with Superboy, and with waning public approval of the hero among the people of Hawaii, Superboy began to feel alone and adrift. He disappeared for a time, vanishing after he was caught in a violent storm out in the Pacific Ocean. Superboy found himself trapped on a strange island of anthropomorphic animal men, and managed to escape with some other humans. He returned to Hawaii only to find his friends were gone, all having moved on after Connor's disappearance. Superboy decided it was best he did the same. He joined back up with Cadmus, working as an agent alongside his old contacts Guardian, the Newsboy Legion, and another clone named Double X, leaving Krypto behind with his friend Hilary Chang. For a time, Connor found happiness once more, only to be disillusioned when the Newsboy Legion and their clones were fired from the Cadmus Project. It was then that Superboy decided to join a superhero team, and he became a founding member of Young Justice, along with Tim Drake and Impulse. The three worked past some initial interpersonal issues and quickly became best friends. During this time, he was invited to the Fortress of Solitude by Superman, where the hero gifted the young clone the Kryptonian name of Kon-El. He felt this name was fitting, as the real Kryptonian that bore this name was given honorary status among the House of El by Superman's father, Jor-El. For doing such good works in life, they welcomed him into his family, and Superman felt this gesture marked the same occasion as Superman welcomed Superboy into his inner circle. And eventually, he would also take on the human identity of Connor Kent. This was a profound and deeply moving moment for Superboy, as it gave him new meaning, direction, and a true sense of belonging, given his unusual origins. To him, it was the first real sign of Superman accepting him as a real Kryptonian. As both part of the Young Justice team and independently, Superboy continued as a hero, with more focus and confidence than ever before. He even began working closer with Superman. Much to the young man's frustration, though, Superman still hadn't divulged his secret identity. It was only after Connor's wayward love Tana was killed that Superman finally revealed his alter ego as Clark Kent. While the experience had briefly turned Connor into an adult with Kryptonian powers. When he was returned back to normal, he was surprised to find himself completely powerless. Although he tried to take this opportunity to live a normal life, the recent loss of Tana and the rapid change of it all left him wanting to remain as Superboy. Using a special ring that gave him the power of flight, courtesy of the Legion of Superheroes, and a special shield, Superboy began training with Guardian, intent on operating as a powerless superhero. However, he barely got through training before his powers were restored. Gifting his brand new, nearly invulnerable shield to Guardian, Superboy returned to form, working once more as a full-fledged superhero with both Young Justice and the Cadmus Project. However, when he was pulled into a war with a cosmic entity known as Immorex, he and the rest of Young Justice were sent to Apokolips on a special mission. They were captured by the sinister and violent Granny Goodness, and though the team did eventually escape, the young man witnessed death and destruction on a level he had not quite experienced before, and watched many of his friends suffer just as badly, if not worse. Superboy went to the Kent farm to recover, but was left troubled by these events. Project Cadmus had been shut down under order of then-President Lex Luthor, while Young Justice was dissolved not long after that. So Superman urged the struggling young clone to stay with Kal-El's adoptive parents at the Kent farm, a request Connor fulfilled for some time. When he was later offered a position on the Teen Titans, Connor accepted. It was during this time as a Titan that Connor first began experiencing signs of his Kryptonian powers emerging. Connor began to doubt himself more and more though, especially after learning that the basis for his human DNA was none other than Lex Luthor. Once again, Connor retreated back to the comfortable refuge of Smallville, and the warm support of a loving family he had never known in life before then. There he stayed for some time until he was confronted by a Superboy from another universe, known as Superboy Prime. This young man had become deeply disturbed and was intent on returning the multiverse back into existence, as, at this point in history, it no longer existed. There was only one world, and up until then, only one Superboy. The two versions of Superboy fought, but Connor was badly outmatched. He briefly managed to get help from his allies, who pulled Superboy Prime into the Speed Force, but it wasn't enough. Connor was killed attempting to take down Superboy Prime, and died in the arms of his teammate Wonder Girl, proud at having saved the world. Connor was mourned and buried along with the others who died during this event. A cult was even started in his name, with the hope the young man would return to life as Superman once did. Their wishes did eventually come true, as Connor's body was rebuilt in the 31st century by the Legion of Superheroes. Connor returned to the present day with his friend Impulse, and Superboy returned as a superhero once more. During the Blackest Night, Connor's death made him an easy target for the Black Lanterns. Though he was briefly possessed by a Black Lantern ring, the fact that Connor was resurrected in the future allowed Wonder Girl to confuse the Black Ring with his remains in the present. In doing so, they were able to destroy the evil ring. From here, Connor returned to working as a Teen Titan while trying to make a life for himself. This time in the place it seems he found the most comfort and meaning in life, the town of Smallville. There he remained, operating as a superhero and building bonds with new friends, until this version of the world disappeared. Other versions of Connor Kent have since emerged in the 52 New Worlds, while a version resembling this iteration of Connor Kent was also present on the Brainiac world overlooked by Telos. A version of Superboy also existed on the Prime Earth for some time, with a completely different origin as a half-human, half-Kryptonian clone. However, even this version of Superboy seems to have disappeared during the events of DC Rebirth. Nobody, including Superman of the original Earth, who remembers just about everything that happened on this older world, has any memory of Connor Kent ever existing. The only individuals that seem to do are those outside of the timeline and those with unusual knowledge of the universe. What happened to Connor Kent is unclear, as the only being known as Superboy currently on this new world is John Kent, Superman's son. It is unclear why he's gone missing when most other superheroes at this point are accounted for, or what this character's current status truly is. But for those few who have noticed his disappearance, such as the Tim Drake from the future, it is an unsettling sign of just how deeply this current timeline has been altered by an unknown and mysterious force. Hello and welcome to Comic Island. My name is Arden, and this is my origins and bio for Superboy of the New Earth. So this was a fun video I was looking forward to for a couple reasons. One, it finishes up the origins and bio for the 4 Supermen that emerged following the death of Superman back in the 1990s. It's a nice way to close that story out, and it's fun to look at this character. Whereas Steel represented the humanity of Superman, the Eradicator represented his Kryptonian origins, Cyborg Superman represented his appearance, but that ultimately appearances only go so far, Superboy represents his youth, exuberance, and ideals. And also is a casual reminder that, experience matters. He's a fun character, and it's an interesting take, but it is really just an example of the folly of youth in action. There's nothing wrong with this story, but unlike Cyborg Superman, the Eradicator, and Steel, this take on a new, younger hero having to learn the ropes that his predecessor had mastered some time ago was nothing new to comics back then and is nothing new now. Where Superboy gets more interesting, and the part that I was really excited about, is that this character had more longevity than any of the other four in terms of how much he had his own focus and story going forward after the Reign of Superman arc. The other three characters would have their own stories going forward and would be a force in the DC universe, but Superboy would have his own solo series for years and years down the road, until DC basically lost the rights to the Superboy name for a time, and that basically covers the period where Connor Kent was killed off, coincidentally. But DC has the rights to the name Superboy once again, so Connor Kent was returned to life, only for him to disappear entirely. I don't think this is a simple case of them not wanting to have Connor Kent around while John Kent is a thing, because it'd be very easy to distinguish Connor from John simply by age and body build. It's not that difficult at all. But it doesn't seem like DC would worry about that sort of thing in a world where they have two versions of Wally West running around at the same time. Rather, this seems much more deliberate when Superman was reflecting back on his past after the two versions of his life were merged into one across the New 52 and the New Earth. He didn't remember Superboy, he only remembered three people rising up after his death. That is conspicuous and deliberate. That means they have put Connor Kent somewhere and have done something with this character and have some sort of plan for him. I'm almost certain about it. And it's had me thinking about the fact that we haven't seen hide nor hair of Wonder Girl, Cassandra Sandsmark, either. I'm not sure what's up with her, but I have a feeling she too has been carefully pushed to the side for this reason. I think something's up. It has to do with this changing timeline and leaving the superheroes more exposed and less experienced. And the fact that Superman or Tim Drake don't remember their close friend kind of feels like it means something. It's a really eerie moment when the future Tim Drake says that the present-day Tim Drake has to reconcile with Connor Kent. And the present-day Tim Drake responds he has no idea who that is. I don't know. Whatever DC has planned, something's up. And it's honestly the most interesting part of this bio in a lot of ways. But in terms of recommended reading, as always, I'll keep on recommending Reign of Superman. It's a great little story to read and really says a lot about Superman. It essentially kills off the character and then breaks him down into four aspects of himself, looking at the four characters through different lenses and each of them having their own features and attributes that made them each compelling characters in their own right. But Superboy, as a series, is full of a lot of great stuff. I really liked his time in Hawaii working as the protector of those islands. It's neat to give a character like this their own unique location that's not only unique in terms of its geography, but its climate and the design behind it. It's fun to have him basically take over Hawaii as his own little area of protection, the way that Superman has Metropolis or Hal Jordan has Coast City. That is a lot of fun. And one cool thing about Connor Kent is a lot of the writing is pretty consistent. Aside from that moment when he got really sick and was basically put into this ageless body of a 16-year-old, which has weird implications when Connor Kent is working with other teenagers who aren't not aging, but also they didn't really age anyways because they don't age superheroes, so it's just a weird moment. But as we look across this character's history, most of the Superboy comics I read and went through when going through this story were pretty good. I have to say my absolute favorite moment though is during Blackest Night, when Connor Kent is basically possessed as a Black Lantern for a brief time. The Black Lanterns see the emotions in other characters and see what lies within them. It's a brilliant move that is a great character study for a lot of DC's heroes and villains throughout the entire event, But one of the best examples of this in action happens when Superboy is a Black Lantern. He's approached by his longtime and initially reluctant companion Krypto and sees what emotions lie in this dog. And the biggest streak that runs through this dog is the purple energies of love. A nice expression of what really came to define Superboy and what gave him meaning in life, the people around him. When he had them and when they were present, he felt like he had a home in Hawaii, in Smallville, and even in Metropolis. And when he didn't have those things, he felt isolated and ultimately would move on. That's Connor Kent's character to a T. And when he ultimately did find love, through the Titans, through Young Justice, and through his companion Krypto, it's really a beautiful thing to see. So thanks for watching. We have 3 more Supermen to cover in my little adventure of various Superman origins and bios before we're done with this little mini-series. And I'll leave you guys kind of guessing as to who those might be. Although you kind of could figure it out if you look at the main canon of Superman and characters called Superman, but you know, some mystery's fun. And let me know what you think of all that in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep reading comics.